Hi everyone, this is JNGGY and this is the operator hindsight for Swire the Elegant Wit. Let's keep it quick to the point and get started. Swire the Elegant Wit is a 6-star merchant operator in the specialist class. Archetype trait has reduced redeployment time, but DP is not refunded upon retreating. While deployed, 3 DP is consumed every 3 seconds, will automatically retreat without sufficient DP. With that in mind, I want to take some time to discuss the problem with Merchant as an archetype. So in Arknights, there are archetypes designed to have pros and cons. For example, Liberators can attack and block normally, but they are given hard-hitting skills and a pretty high HP pool. Phalanx classes doesn't attack without skills, but has decent toughness of skill and talents that help them survive. Reapers are empty, but can recover HP with attacks, so they still have pretty good sustain. Now, there are also archetypes that, for some reason, have some serious cons to their trait with unspecified trade-offs, like Duelist, who can't recover SP without blocking, and Geek, who literally is dying on their own. But amongst them, Merchant is just on a different level. When they're in the lineup, you just stop gaining DP naturally. And DP is a resource shared by every unit in the team. So not only do they have a drawback, but that drawback puts everyone on the line. Now we're done with the cons, we also need to know the trade-off for that. From past experience, we can know that merchants are countermeasure characters. They usually serve a very specific purpose, perhaps to utilize your DP once your formation is set up. But that is somewhat contradictory with the comfort playstyles. I'm talking about having some AFK setup, and then 1 or 2 executors, someone like Neural Alter, Surtur in the back pocket for emergency. And using a merchant basically takes away all those rooms for safety with constant DP consumption. I'm not saying everyone is playing that way, but having that fluctuating DP is kinda uncomfortable. Second thing about countermeasures is that they are oftentimes a better name for niche, right? If you look at the previous merchants, Jay, specialist against low defense enemies and infected creatures. He had a pretty good reputation, but I have to point out that it has a lot to do with him being a 4-star. Mr. Nothing, to be honest, his skills are not very useful, but he did find his perfect enemy, the IS-3 ending 2 boss, the Final Knight. Then we have Lee, which in my opinion is the exact definition of countermeasures in Arknights. Status effect immune and ricochet is a very strong tool when you need it. Good survivability against enemies beyond his range, and a soft crowd control by pushing away all the units that he's not currently dealing with. Some of these situations, they are just irreplaceable, but outside of those contexts, the return of using them usually does not justify the cost. And I guess they want to make a merchant with more relevance to daily content, so they changed direction a little bit and make Swire Alter, which we will dive deep into. Swire's core talent obtains 1 coin on skill activation that can be used for seals, obtains 1 coin each time DP is consumed by trait during skill duration, and gains an attack plus 4% and stacks up to 8 or 9 times. This is a talent related to her functions and damage. When using skill 1 and skill 2, which are passive skills, she gets the coin from skill activation on deployment. DP consumption before skill activation and the coin on skill activation does not count for the attack stacks. In other words, only the trait triggers during skills will stack attack bonuses. She can still obtain the attack stacks even when her coins are full, and the attack bonuses are permanent in the same deployment. She doesn't lose them even when she deactivates her skills. So basically, this is a warm-up talent that fully stacks up in around 30 seconds. So you can tell that they encourage her continued presence on the field with this one. But the coin on skill activation also leaves some space for hella dropping her with skill 1 or skill 2. Now for talent 2, when receiving fatal damage if there are enough DP, consumes 5 DP to restore 70% or 80% HP. The cost is doubled each time this effect is triggered. So let's go over the details. First of all, the way this revival works is that Swire will receive a 0.01 second immortality status on fatal damage, then restores HP when it ends. So theoretically, she can revive and die again very quickly to enemies like Patriots Phase 1, but that's more of a meme. Just don't let it fool you. By calculation, she can revive 5 times in the regular map in a row, so 5, 10, 20, 40, 80, and the 6th time requires 160, which is not possible in regular maps. The DP cost for revival does reset after retreating, but when she's up against some mechanisms that forces operators to retreat, like Frost Nova's Floor Seal and then the Sarcasm Devours, etc., she will take your DP first, then not reviving at all. So be mindful of that and don't pin her against those situations. To be fair, this is a pretty strong talent. In Arknights, sustain is important, and the key to sustain is just not dying. So revival is one legit way of sustaining. It reduces the need for healing, or really just no need for that. And that is exactly her ticket to low ops count clears. For that reason, even though this talent only comes after you get her to E2, it's nonetheless a big part to Swire's strength. Swire comes with a module, Merchant X. It reduces the DP cost from her trait from 3 every 3 seconds to 2 every 3 seconds. The upgrades improve her talent 1, which now gives her 2 coins on skill activation with module level 3, and 1 more % for every stack to the attack bonuses with module level 2. I'm gonna point it out straight that the additional coin is more useful and they keep it behind level 3. That's a nice one, I'm gonna give it to them. I've stressed this quite a few times. Base effect for Merchant X is a qualitative change. You gain 1 DP every 3 seconds instead of nothing at all, so it's a must-have if you ever plan to use her. For upgrades, she gets 2 coin on skill activation, which translates to 2 healing instances on deployment for skill 1 and 2 bottles ready to be deployed for skill 2. The max attack bonuses she get from the talent increased from 36% to 45%, which is about 11.4% of damage increase. Not a lot by module standard because the upgrade is a combination between function and damage improvement, so I recommend choosing which level to go for based on how much you expect to use her. So other than hindsight, we also do some future speculation in this series. We recently got an idea of what Merchant Y does with Lee. Its base effect is attack plus 4% every time DP is consumed by trades, stacking up to 5 times, which is basically a replica of Swire's Talent 1. If Swire gets this module in the future, it's likely to be linked to an improvement to her Revive talent. So you might get where we're getting at here. Lee's Module X, the DP based effect one, is linked with his talent that consumes DP for status effect Ricochet. It makes good sense because it makes him cost less overall when he does his job. But for Swire, she got this Module X that is linked with a talent 1, so a DP base effect with damage talent. And she's expected to get Module Y, a damage base effect with her Revive talent, the talent that actually costs DP, which kind of feels like a missed opportunity where it would have been better if they were paired the other way. Overall, Merchant X is still a much more quality of life choice, and you can enjoy it as the best module for Swire for at least 6 months, that's for sure. Now that we're done with modules, let's take a look at Swire's skills. TLDR, my recommendation is Skill 2 Mastery 3 over Skill 3 Mastery 3 over Skill 1, which I don't really recommend. Skill 1 consumes 1 coin to heal an ally with less than 70% HP in the surrounding 8 tiles for the next attack with 80% of attack. A passive skill coin limit 3, which means 3 seconds per stack and 3 stacks max. You get 2 heals ready on deploy with module level 3, but it's still dispensed over 2 attacks, so not instantly. Since this skill certainly resembles First Aid from Guardians, let's do a comparison between Swire Skill 1 and Zarya Skill 1. Swire has the ability to do her impression of first aid kits, so Hella Drop for 2 emergency heals. She also has a much shorter warm-up time for maximum healing, and if you look at the graph of Psycho's HPS over their warm-up period, you can tell that in midterm, Swire has a slightly better healing potential. But in my opinion, there are a few problems with actually picking this skill. Hella dropping for heals is good, but her talent for sure encourages her continued presence on the field, at least for a good 30 seconds. But having her cosplay a Guardian doesn't really have good value. First, when we use Zarya Skill 1, not only do we pick her for the ground healing option, but she's also there to block and tank. Swire, on the other hand, is a block 1 unit, certainly not as tough as well. The heal threshold being at 70% of HP also means that she's gonna take quite some of those heals for herself. Don't forget, she could be just fine not getting healing, right? So it genuinely may have been better if she does not heal herself with this skill. So using this skill means that you are basically leaving a block 1 unit who can't quite kill and can't quite block, just heals every 3 seconds while taking 2 DP from you on the field. And I would honestly recommend using a real medic instead. Overall, not recommended. Skill 2 consumes 1 coin to place a champagne bomb on a deployable passable tile within range. The bomb deals 200% of attack as physical damage to the first enemy it touches and slows the target for 2 seconds. After 3 seconds on the field, the bomb deals an additional instance of damage, coin limit 5. The range of which she can deploy Champagne is shown here, same as Chongyue's skill 3 range. This is just for Champagne and not her actual attack range, remember that. Best cycle DPS possible for this skill is 1807, assuming they are always primed with a 3-second timer and have 2 times damage ready. You can tell by the champagne bubbling that they have been primed and can do 2 instances of damage. Remember, she's not a Trap Master, so unlike the Trap Master module, it is 2 instances of damage instead of double damage, meaning that the DPH will stay the same. Also, because she's not a Trap Master, bombs can be deployed under an enemy's feet. One more thing, although they are called bombs, they are actually single target, not AoE. So here's a dissection of how the skill works. When there are multiple tiles and coins available, Swire will put down Champagne at an interval of 1 second. However, it only takes her around 0.5 seconds to put a new bomb when the previous one was triggered on the same tile. The Champagne bombs themselves had a wind-up time of 1 second after it's deployed before it can deal damage. So when a deployed bomb is triggered, it will slow its target for 2 seconds. 0.5 seconds after trigger, a new Champagne, if there are enough coins, will be placed on the same tile, where it needs 1 second to prime before dealing damage to the target. This sequence up here only takes 1.5 seconds, less than the slow time of 2 seconds. Therefore, Swire can slow a single target continuously when she has reserved coins. Some additional notes, she will prioritize placing bombs on the tile with enemies closest to the objectives, so even when she leaks enemy behind her, she will still try to make up for it by placing the bombs behind, even though she's blocking someone else. This is a pretty nice gimmick to help her holding the lane. Also, same as Trap Masters, the damage from Champagne is not considered from Swire herself. They are non-traceable damage, so there will be no ricochet, and can avoid some of the troublesome mechanisms in the game, like the Emperor's Blade. To conclude the pros and cons, it's a skill with very smooth damage pattern. 1 bottle every 3 seconds starting from deployment. Absolutely no worry about skill cycles and such. Very much the standard of an AFK skill. Second, it's got good area control capability, can slow a single target until it leaves the range, and has some pretty good targeting mechanics to help with the job. However, it's quite weak against hordes of enemies because 1, that means most of the bombs will be unprimed, losing out on half of the damage potential. Second, enemies can outpace her gaining her coins, so instead of placing a bottle every 0.5 seconds, she now has to wait for 3 seconds. And that can happen quite a lot depending on the map. Overall, it's a lane holder AFK skill with herself having some proper sustain. Easy to use, so generally the most picked skill for Swire. However, it's not designed to deal with big hordes of enemies or enemies with high defense. Finally, the competition for lane holder has been fierce. Joining that race with a DP consuming trait certainly wouldn't be that appealing to a lot of the players. Skill 3 attacks hit twice and obtains 1 coin when defeating an enemy. When the skill is deactivated, consume all coins to attack random enemies within a certain range, as shown below, dealing 150% of attack as physical damage and knocks them back moderately for each coin consumed. The skill can be manually deactivated, obviously, max coin 10 and needs 5 SP between activations. When deactivating, Swire shoots out coins with an interval of 0.07 seconds, so 2 frames per coin. If skill 2 is the easiest skill to use, then skill 3 is probably one of the more complicated skill in the game. There are two key parts to this skill. First, each coin acts as a reserved 2k damage which can be stored up and blast out at once for a burst of 20k damage, hence the nuke attack for Swire. Secondly, other than the damage, she also does multiple force 1 pushes with those coins. Now let's go over the push part. Conclusion is easy, her push can move enemies with weight 3 or less. However, if you look at the difference between 1 force 1 push and 10 force 1 pushes on a weight 3 enemy, you can notice the difference in travel distance. I prepped a physics lessons for the mechanics behind it, but I'm not gonna go through it. You can pause and watch for yourself. Basically, when forces are exerted on a target in close succession, preferably on the same frame, it will result in an exponential increase to the distance traveled. Although Swire's coins are hit every 2 frames, it will still push a weight 3 target much further than it would seem by 10 independent pushes. So to put this advantage to use, there are some best use scenarios for this skill. First, its best advantage is against enemies with weight 2 or 3 where they are dangerous up close. For enemies lighter than this, VD skill 2 or even Lee skill 3 would be a better tool against them. Or, because of the uniqueness of consecutive shift, you can use this to interrupt some enemy skills by just pushing them. If a single burst is not enough to kill an enemy, then preferably you also need a long runway. This skill actually comes back very fast, and sometimes you may get a better result than a regular push stroker skill 1. It's just that you need to do them manually. It is also good when enemies are coming rather separately, so you can use some mobs to grab additional coins while waiting for the elite you want to push to come. Finally, and a specialty to Swire is her ability to pull off diagonal push on her own due to the unique range. It doesn't have a lot of application as of now, but there are some pretty ideal spots in IS-4 for you to explore. Certainly a useful addition to Shifter Knights. For the damage side, auto attacks do not have very high DPH. Instead, they make it a double hit to help her kill mobs faster to earn coins. Then you use these coins when the elite comes, or when there are multiple enemies rushing her so she splash on them. If you only look at her skill damage, it is 20k burst damage over a cycle of maximum 30 seconds, which I would say can only be a middle of the pack in Lucas. For example, Chongyue does 8.7k with a 3.8 second cycle, Yato does 32k with a 21.4 second cycle, and Irene can do 28k with a 24 second cycle. All of them have a better DPH quality than Swire and are multi-target. So the advantage of using this skill as a burst damage choice really comes down to it having a flexible damage pattern. So instead of having a skill cycle dependent on SP or redeployment time, it allows a customized usage that you can change and adjust on the go based on the stage. For the hindsight part, we talked about how they wanted to design a more versatile merchant, so Swire is more of a jack-of-all-trades character. I wouldn't say she's a master of none, but they certainly put a lot of restrictions into what she can do. One very obvious observation is how they limited the DPH she can do. Her champagne does 2 instances of damage instead of double the damage, and her auto attack in skill 3 is also a double hit instead of some sort of attack increase. That's the compromise for having a fast cycle skill set with some flexible burst damage. For performance in upcoming events, she can be a pretty viable starter in IS-4 if you want to. The problem with her is that she becomes significantly less impactful as you progress through the floors, due to the DP regen debuff that is literally a merchant killer, as well as her damage slowly falling behind due to the climbing HP of enemies, but you can still use her to pull off some diagonal push tricks. That's basically her notable presence. She does have some good performances in low ops runs because DP is bound to be excessive in those runs, so it turns into a powerful resource for her to literally buy her own life. She can also solo quite some stages, most notably 718 with her skill 2 holding down the lane and staying alive with the revive talent. Finally, let's do the overview. Swire the Elegant Wit is a 6-star merchant with a kit designed to serve various purposes and playstyles. For AFK enjoyers, she has Skill 2 which instantly goes AFK on deploy. For Shifter Knights, all players who like a lot of manual work, her Skill 3 requires a lot of on and off to better go with the flow of the stage. There are quite some bright spots in the kit, but she's still heavily held back by the merchant archetype. For daily, I have her at 3. Both her skill 2 and 3 have some okay lane holding capability, especially against mobs. Her skill 2 also provides area CC ability to help her lock down a single enemy or to prevent leaking when there are more of them. She has a pretty solid talent to help with her sustain, so you can deploy her somewhere far away, have her finish the job, for example push someone down the hole, and then get her out without worrying about her dying before getting it done. But in daily content, we have quite the amount of lane holder and some sharp tools that hella drop in and out just as good, while not costing DP doing so. Merchants are generally a counterintuitive class to use for daily content, and the countermeasures they provide, so for Swire it's more referring to the hella drop skill 1 heals and skill 3 diagonal push. These are usually less relevant for players mostly doing casual content. In this sense, she's kinda like Ling. They are decent on their own, but you'll find it hard to feed her in your daily 12-op team. Rating for Advanced is 4, mostly for her impressive performance in low ops count clears, thanks to her revival talent again and how she has a lot of DP to play with when there aren't much more to deploy. Diagonal push is something that currently only Swire can consistently pull off on her own, so that's another plus. Generally, merchants have no chance in hardcore contents when there are DP regen debuffs. That happens in almost every CC and is a thing in IS4. And at the end of the day, for hardcore content, it sometimes does come down to countermeasures for picking and operators, like how players use Lee against Mizuki in IS3 4th ending, and Swire still used when she can push a hard-to-kill enemy down the hole. In this sense, Swire does have a disadvantage to Lee due to the nature of her more jack-of-all-trades kit. Here are the recommendations to the future banners. Compared to last time, I raised the priority for Degenbrecher even higher because I do believe she's a very strong physical damage dealer who's perhaps just slightly behind Winnar. Although I don't usually do direct comparisons, but she and Swire both have a 30-second-ish cycle where Degenbrecher does 39k damage to 6 targets with high DPH and defense ignore. One day we'll get to her, but for now, these are the preview for operators coming. I do make adjustments to some of them, especially the one closer to CN release, so keep an eye out for those. Thank you for coming by and I will see you in another video. Bye bye.